We just passed the Famicom's 6th birthday. I think we can officially say that the Famicom is over the hill. The first game of its 7th year that we're going to look at is Willow. This is a game that often shows up on lists of hidden gems of the era, though it's also one that I haven't really played before this recording. Willow is based on Ron Howard's epic fantasy movie that had a story developed by George Lucas. And the movie was a complete flop. I think that although it's not very good, the movie still has some fun moments and a bit of charm in that bad 80s adventure movie way. Capcom licensed the film to make games with, and they made 2 of them. One of them is an arcade game very similar to Wonder Boy in Monsterland. And the other is this action RPG. The story for the video game is dramatically different from the film. Here there was a division between the sky and the earth, and the evil witch who controlled the sky decided to take over. And the diminutive Willow is the chosen hero who has to stop her. Willow is a Nelwyn, not a halfling, because a halfling would get them sued by the Tolkien estate. But right from the start of the game, even that distinction that was significant in the film isn't here. There are plenty of tall people hanging around the starting village, for example. As you set out, you'll need to go around the village and talk to everyone so that you'll get your equipment. You hit the start button to bring up a menu, and there you can equip your sword, magic, and shield. You attack with your sword by pressing B, and you cast your magic by pressing A. Magic consumes your magic points, of course, and the only real way to recover those is to find somebody in a town to do it for you. I think even this early on, the biggest problem with Willow should be obvious. Everything looks exactly the same. With all of the environments divided up into single screens, and the exits always divided up in the same way, it becomes very easy to lose your way in Willow. I found the towns to be especially bad, since they reuse the same tile layouts everywhere. But the complaint extends to just about everything here. There's no landmarks or consistent enemy placement. Navigating the world is much harder than it should be for an action-adventure game. When you step on certain spots on some screens, enemies might appear. There's a few places where it's always the same enemies that will appear, and they're always there, but for the most part, you're going to have situations where you may or may not have enemies on a screen, and they're not necessarily the same ones. Usually you'll want to take them down with your sword, and your sword swing becomes faster as you level. So for your starting sword, you don't get full speed until you're level 3. And for the second sword that you find, you don't get full speed until you're level 5. There's a real experience grind in Willow as a result of that. It doesn't start off too bad. For the first 2 levels, you only have to beat about 15 enemies. But the experience rewards don't scale up as fast as the experience requirements. Experience is really the only thing you get from fighting. There's no cash in the game, although enemies can, very rarely, drop something to refresh you. It happened once for me in the hour and a half I was playing. I didn't find the spells to be especially helpful early on. The acorns that you start out with can stun some weak enemies, and the fire spell just circles you and doesn't seem to do a whole lot. There is, however, a healing spell that completely refills your health. That can keep you going for quite a while. Against bosses you go to a special arena where there's life bars on the side. I'm not sure why they did that since it doesn't really make a bit of difference. There are some enemies that you won't be able to defeat initially, and in those cases you're just going to have to run away. Well, after you turn back from a pig. In my time playing, I cleared the first dungeon and was on my way to the second, so it feels like Willow is a long game. To deal with that, when you die you can get a password, but the password comes with a really severe penalty. You lose all of your experience down to the previous level. So if it took 2,000 experience to level up and you died at 1900, then you have to start over again. The enemy combat is not the friendliest either. There's a bad tendency for enemies to just park themselves on top of you, and then you get hit over and over again. I have one more significant complaint about Willow, and that's how it keeps reusing environments. The third region I got to was yet another forest that looked exactly the same as the previous two forests I had gone through. And it didn't help that that was where palette-swapped enemies started appearing. I get why people kind of liked Willow. Despite all of my complaints, it's a fine action RPG. Not really outstanding, but not horrible. And action RPG is a genre that's been drying up on the Famicom. At the same time, it's not an exceptional example of the genre. It probably doesn't help Willow that I've been playing some other 8-bit action RPGs lately that hold together a lot better. I could see myself going back and playing through this one, but it's never going to be one of my top priorities.